Hello everyone, this is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is the Loosh Collectors, Questions and Answers 2. There was so many, I couldn't do it all in one episode. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the work of this channel, you can do so on Patreon. And when you join, you get downloaded episodes. I think there's around 100 right now where you can put on your podcast app and listen to it anywhere. There's an email where we can talk back and forth. You can ask questions and share experiences. And of course, you get your advanced videos on Sunday. And if you're interested, there will be a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like to learn how to astral project, be glad to send you some information about the class. You'll find the email in the description as well, and I'll then send you, the necessary info. Okay, now in the first Loosh Collectors questions and answers, I answered a number of interesting questions. I also reaffirmed, as if I have to do this, but I reaffirmed my allegiance to Earth and the human race. While I'm somewhere else in the universe, when I'm in somebody else's plane, dimension, or home, I play by their rules, because you don't go into a stranger or a friend's house and start telling them what's what. Diplomacy is the name of the game. Now, I understand that there are many others who are better at that than I am. However, you're stuck with me. I don't know what else to tell you. Anyone who's better at it is with my blessing. Go out there and do a better job. I do the best I can, and I always think, wow, I should have done it this way. I shouldn't have done it that way. And of course, in this particular instance, I wasn't planning on going to the Loosh dimension. They kind of drug me along like a fly on their windshield when they returned to their dimension. I could have fled back to my physical body, but being the curiosity killed the cat type of individual, I decided to stay and risk whatever so that I could get some answers. But keep in mind, I still fly the flag of the blue and green ball in the sky. First up, let's start with someone who was angry when they wrote this comment. And whenever I see angry comments, being the, of course, Star Trek and Star Wars nerd that I am, I think that the wise words of Master Yoda: fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. I always like to keep that playing on my mind whenever I get angry or whenever I see someone else. But anyway, Woon Ko said, what kind of idiotic reasoning is that, quote, because you are all violent animals, we get to violate you? Well, I'm not sure that's what they said, but that's what Woon Ko, that's how he took it. He said, if they inflict pain and suffering and ignorance on humans to keep collecting this life force, or Loosh, then they are not spiritually advanced themselves either. This goes against every notion of, quote, a loving universe. And also, if humans evolve to a degree where we can all see and protect our life force energy from these beings, then what? I don't know. Are they going to try and prevent that? I.e., are they going to try to retard, our growth? This just doesn't make any sense. I think what you've got here is you have an intelligent individual who felt fear when he read about this type of thing or he listened to a video. And I understand that fear. It's an animal fear of being preyed upon. It's deeply buried in our genetics. Yes, we are very proud of ourselves nowadays because you have to pretty much win the unlucky version of the lottery in order to be eaten alive as a human on the planet today. more people die of bee stings, I hear, than are eaten by other creatures. Now, of course, it still does happen, but your chances of being eaten by a crocodile or shark or whatever are pretty small. Yet, in our history, not that long ago, when we were small hunter-gatherers looking to find a mastodon or some large bear to kill for dinner, almost as often we ended up being their dinner instead. So we have this innate fear of predation. And I think Woon Koo here, or Woon Ko, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it properly, and I think that he reacted with fear, which then led him to anger. So it's understandable as far as I'm concerned. But I think he's looking at it slightly in a slanted way. And there were some other folks who commented on his comment, and I'd like to read them. No Talk said, I do not think they inflict anything upon us. They just harvest. There is only the harvest for them, and we create Loosh by our own actions and decisions. Not to mention, there are many other species they also collect from. It's not just humans. Now, I went ahead and commented as well. And, because I generally don't know precisely what this Loosh is and precisely how it affects us by their collection of it. For instance, we humans shed hair, sweat, tears, and skin particles every day we're alive. I suppose if there was some alien trailing behind us, constantly collecting these things, despite the fact that we're shedding them, we'd probably be, hey, who gave you permission to steal these parts of my body from me? Despite the fact that quite unconsciously you've already discarded them behind you. So I guess what I'm saying here is that I don't know for a fact, I don't think anybody knows for a fact, that this Loosh collection from us and other species isn't just a cast-off, isn't just something that is emitted, like we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. So I'm just saying, I just have a question mark next to this whole thing. So I think before we immediately jump to a paranoia, that we at least consider that, maybe these are just nothing but cast-offs that we humans don't need, don't even miss. I mean, when's the last time you were mad because you mislaid a hair? Believe me, I got a lot less hair in my head than I used to. So I've left a lot of myself behind somewhere. And at the time, I didn't miss it. I miss it a little now, but at the time, I didn't. Now, Maverick Setsuna had another opinion. Maverick said, who said that they even care about the opinions of other races? What makes you think that they feel the need to be loving to a lesser race or be loving at all? And then he went on a great deal more. That's a perfectly good point. I think once again, we are, number one, assuming our high place and high status in the universe, which, let me suggest, may not be deserved and may not be accurate at the same time. And you're also assuming that they're subscribing to your basic spiritual beliefs. And that as such, since they seem to be in disagreement with your core spiritual beliefs, that somehow they're in error and that they're not right to be doing what they're doing. Now, right and wrong, of course, assumes that there is some sort of agreed upon set of principles. What if there isn't? What if every race in the galaxy, and particularly something as alien as these plasma beings, what if they aren't? What if they haven't agreed to anything like that? And what if it if they're what I consider is they seem to be a race that keeps to itself. They're very insular. They're xenophobic, if you will. I don't really think they believe anywhere near what we believe, and that they have an entirely different set of values, ones that don't align with ours. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that ours are superior and theirs are inferior, because I'm not in a position to understand the differences, much less sit in judgment of them. It is, it is what it is. But I think it's a good point that, hey, wait a minute, maybe we're not all on the same page here. There was more back and forth with Woon Ko between myself and a number of other folks. And he definitely still is feeling some kind of way. As a matter of fact, he wanted to know, quote, where my spirit fire was that recognizes something that's unjust. My reply is basically the plasma beings have a lot in common with tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. I can talk to you about these instances, and I'm not going to shout at the microphone. I'm not going to share my righteous anger about how this tornado destroyed this town, how this hurricane destroyed an entire section of the U.S. coastline. I'm not going to complain about a volcano which caused massive damage and loss of life. Neither will I complain and moan or show righteous indignation towards the Loosh Collectors, because just like these natural occurrences, they're beyond my control. They're beyond the control of humanity. The Loosh Collector technology might be 1,000,000 years ahead of ours. My shouting anger in this episode would not only be unpleasant, especially if you had the volume turned up too high, but it's an impotent rage. I could be a news reporter reporting a hurricane or a tornado. I could shake my fist at the storm and curse it, but the storm doesn't care. It doesn't recognize my righteous indignation. It ignores it because it's going to do what it's going to do. These beings have their own agenda. Perhaps for them, this is life. Those little ones that seem to be attracted to me at first impressed me as young. Perhaps they're feeding their young. What extremes have we humans gone to protect our young? We've slaughtered each other. We've slaughtered plenty of animals in protection of our young, and we thought ourselves justified in doing so. So I think that's a thought that we should consider here. No one benefits from me, blazing forth with loud or foul language, cursing these beings, because quite frankly, they don't care. And matter of fact, I don't even think they have the emotion that we could even attribute to they don't care. They are what they are. They're very advanced, and there's literally nothing that we humans can do about the process. So all I can do, after holding on to this information for almost 3 decades out of fear of punishment, all we can do is try to absorb this knowledge and try to use it to our own benefit. But let's understand that perhaps this universal rule of law isn't quite as universal as we weaker humans would like it to be. Um, you know, here on Earth, whenever someone goes to the UN, it's usually a weaker nation because they need the help and they don't have anywhere else to go. And so they're looking for strong international laws, whereas larger countries that can defend themselves and are strong don't feel the need to worry about international laws. Lastly, I'd like to consider something, and Vanderlei Dalagnolo, Vanderlei Dalagnolo said that maybe we have a clue as to why the dinosaurs were killed and why. And I think that's what they were alluding to when they were talking about sending that celestial object to the Earth. And I think that's something that we need to think about for a second. If these beings are indeed involved with Earth for such a long time, such that, and Monroe also mentioned this, by the way, that the dinosaurs were wiped out intentionally by this Loosh race because they weren't producing the high level or the high quality of Loosh that was being demanded. So they sent, according to them, this large rock that fell to Earth 66 million years ago, wiping out the rule of the non-avian dinosaurs, which had ruled Earth for 140 million years. So let's think about that for a second. If it hadn't been for them, we wouldn't be here. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that the reason the rise of the mammals happened was because the old etch-a-sketch of life had been shaken, and all of a sudden all these large predators that had once ruled the earth were gone. And over millions of years, those small little rat-like mammals that were hiding in burrows from the dinosaurs during the day and then came out and tried to eke out a living at night, that we never, as mammals, would have risen under those kind of circumstances. We needed a world that was emptied of predators, emptied of life in the oceans and in the and on the land. So mammals rose, and we entered the age of mammals, and eventually, somewhere around 10 million years or so, I think, primates rose, and eventually led to us. So in a very real sense, assuming these are facts, they are gardeners of humanity, that without their actions, we would not be present on Earth to criticize their actions. Now, I'm not swearing up and down that this information they gave or that Monroe talked about is 100% factual. I don't know. But I think it is interesting to think about. I don't know that it makes anybody feel hugely better about the current process. I think we as humans would rather be in the control seat, maybe going to other planets and harvesting their resources rather than the reverse happening. It's never comfortable to be in the position of being the natives that are being taken advantage of, is it? It's very easy because history books are typically written by the people that invaded and took the resources from those who were weaker and who didn't have the ability to defend themselves. I think it's interesting that we're uncomfortable that perhaps we're in a situation that we would rather be on the other side of. At any rate, that's the episode, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and I certainly thank everyone who participated, and of course the legion of other folks who asked great questions and statements. But I'm only going to make 2 of these Other than that, it gets too extensive. So if you liked it, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure that bell is solid so you're notified on Wednesday afternoon and Saturday morning when the new episodes are posted. Keep those questions and comments coming. I love your suggestions about episodes as well. It's always nice if I can't think of something to talk about, someone asks a question, and now I have an idea for an episode. At any rate, this is Rick, and as always, I will see you on the astral plane.